watching the Learning Channel.
I'm Nick Mancuso. In this episode of Mysterious Forces Beyond, Vampires.
I said, well, I'll buy you a drink if you let me have some of your blood.
Yes, I do let him drink my blood, and I cut myself to ensure that there is no difficulties.
Vampires are about two things. They're about power and sex.
The beast within it is just an aspect of everyone.
It is evil, unadulterated evil.
Few creatures of the night have captured our imagination like vampires. But do they really exist? What explains our enduring fascination with vampires? And what dark and hidden parts of our psyche are aroused and captivated by the legends of the undead? In 1897, Irish author Bram Stoker took the many jumbled strands of the vampire myth and wove them into the classic novel Dracula. This vampire which is amongst us is of himself so strong a person as 20 men. He is of cunning more than mortal, can appear at will when and where, and in any of the forms that are to him, he can direct the element, the storm, the fog, the thunder. He can grow and become small. He can at times vanish and come unknown.
Now it's your turn.
A vampire is a being who is immortal.
Maybe I'm not quite human. I don't feel quite human.
We can simply kill a mortal, but on the other hand, you can create other vampires through the hunger, by the kiss.
People are interested by the absolute and unadulterated power of evil.
Real vampires do exist.
I have a very nasty monster within.
The vampire is a power trip.
I can be rather ruthless and rather cruel if I don't watch myself.
Ruthless and cruel describe Prince Vlad Dracula of Wallachia, a region of Romania where his castle remains today. Born in 1431, Vlad heroically turned back the Ottoman Turks, impaling thousands as a warning to other invaders. Dracula then began a new reign of terror, killing thousands of his own subjects until he was assassinated in 1476. Dracula's decapitated corpse was rumored to have risen from its grave. Bram Stoker truly brought Dracula back from the dead in the novel that forever linked the prince to vampire legend. Vampire expert Paul Barber says Stoker's Dracula also used bubonic plague superstitions.
When people died, particularly if they died or were sick and had blood at their lips, this was assumed to be evidence of blood-sucking and therefore was connected with vampire lore.
During the plagues of the Middle Ages, of the early Middle Ages, it was very much felt that it was the rotting corpse that indeed caused the plague, that transmitted the disease, and so they saw in the dead body the absolute personification, if you like, of evil.
They dug up the last person who died, or the person who they thought was most likely to be the guilty party, killed that body again, and thought that in this way they were bringing an end to epidemics.
Do I believe in vampires? I think that vampires, as people who drank blood and did not like garlic, I think they probably existed in the Middle Ages, yes. And I suspect that those individuals in the Middle Ages who were called vampires were in fact suffering from porphyria.
Victims of the rare blood disease porphyria sometimes grow long, flowing facial hair, recalling the legend that vampires can change into wolves.
Patients who suffer from porphyria and vampires undergo severe damage when they go out in the sunlight. Now, in addition to their sensitivity to light, you'll recall that one of the other major areas that vampires were supposed to indulge in was the drinking of blood. Now, it turns out that one of the best clinical treatments for some forms of porphyria is to give the patient an injection of heme. Heme is the red pigment in blood.
Blend porphyria with the legend of Romania's Prince Dracula. Add a dash of superstition and a dollop of Black Death. It's a recipe for the Gothic vampire of old. Movie buff David Scull has seen the ancient vampire's truly repulsive side.
Bram Stoker wrote Dracula in 1897. He created this Darwinian Superman, a really foul character. People who haven't read the novel sometimes forget what a really unpleasant character Count Dracula was. There was nothing suave, nothing seductive about him. He was an animal.
The modern 20th century vampire has become a far more refined creature. After all, with eternal life, there's plenty of time to amass incredible wealth, get really good at sexual seduction, and land great leading roles in the movies.
I think vampires tend to be the most popular movie monster icons because they are so much like us and embody a lot of things that we admire. It's power, wealth, the transcendence of death, eternal youth, instant hypnotic control over the opposite sex or the same sex.
For vampire movie buffs, Forrest Ackerman's Hollywood mansion, filled with monster memorabilia, is Mecca.
This is the cape worn by Bela Lugosi 1,000 times on the stage as nightly he portrayed the undying vampire Dracula. And this hat comes from a lost film. They called him the Man of 1,000 Faces, Lon Chaney. He wore this in a film called London After Midnight when he, too, portrayed a vampire.
Vampires may not really exist, but that doesn't mean the belief in them isn't real and that the belief in them isn't dangerous.
I see a lot of analogies between my values and the vampire values.
Stephanie is a law student who leads a secret life, vampire style.
There's a certain element of romance and in a sense of drama. Everything that happens to them is large and important.
Dave Pike is a market research analyst who shares Stephanie's fascination.
They are very powerful. They are, what every male wants to be. Many won't admit it, but, somebody who lives off others, who is strong enough to take on all challengers.
Certainly I believe that the vampire lifestyle is a reflection or an acknowledgement of the beast within all of us.
For a growing number of young people, the vampire lifestyle means a game based on the cult of the undead, a game called The Masquerade.
Monsters have been a part of our folklore for centuries, but few creatures have captured our imagination the way vampires have. What is it about the vampire myth that explains our enduring interest? Is it the overtones of sexual lust, power, and control? Or is it a fascination with the immortality of the undead?
Well, I'm going to be transforming myself into my vampire character, whose name is Eurydice.
Currently, Dave Pike is becoming a ravenous by the name of Zidane. This is a vampire from the Romanian area of Europe who has lived for roughly 150 years.
When I'm playing a vampire, I feel a lot more in control. I can be more myself, be a little less diplomatic, a little more demanding.
I'm basically summoning up a little bit of the animal that I have inside me just to give me the predatory look and the feeling behind what it would be to be actually living forever and living off the blood of others.
This is the final step. This is when Stephanie becomes Eurydice.
The Masquerade is a performance game similar to Dungeons & Dragons. Players assume the roles of vampires, each with special powers. in a gothic adventure improvised in Toronto nightclubs.
If I had the opportunity to be a real vampire, I'd jump at the chance. Absolutely screamingly jump at the chance. That is, of course, if vampires are real.
Well, the mystique of the vampire itself is very graceful, very androgynous, and it's also one of those myths that have always frightened little children.
Sin? Oh, I believe in sin. I love it.
And your name's?
Morpheus Black.
And vampires are about two things. They're about power and sex. And those are two of the most interesting things I can think of on Earth. And people are very drawn to the idea of being overwhelmed.
Does vampirism exist on the psychological plane? Is it possible for a vampire to possess his victim's mind, bend it to his will?
The psychic vampire is an individual who is unconscious of their ability to tap an inner source, to give them their own aliveness, their own vitality, their own sense of purpose. And so they keep looking to outer sources in order to fuel or feed themselves psychically, energetically.
Well, it happened about 10 years ago. And this person, whenever he would be around me, I would have that feeling, or I'd have that real high. And maybe some people can relate to that. However, when he was gone, suddenly I felt incredibly depleted.
Under hypnosis, Maria tries to escape the spell of a man she hardly knew.
Allow yourself to return to the memory of the time of that experience of being drained and drawn and depleted.
Strong feelings of desire.
What is it that you desire?
I want to have what he has.
What is it that he has that you want?
He has power.
Some people claim that they're attacked by psychic vampires, in which they feel their life force being drained from somebody at a distance. My reaction to that is that they need to see a psychiatrist.
Could be something as simple as what's in the vernacular today called codependence, where you feel like you need another person in order to be okay yourself, and you try to control that other person. Or likewise, you let yourself be controlled by another person.
There is some evidence that people can mentally affect the physiology, the body itself, of somebody at a distance. We know that's true from laboratory experiments. So in principle, somebody may feel that someone at a distance is affecting them. But if they think of it in terms of a vampire, my antenna goes up and I immediately start thinking about normal psychopathology.
But belief in vampires is seductive, according to author Greg Cox, because vampires always reflect the fashions of their times.
1819, that's when vampire fiction started being written. And suddenly the vampires became glamorous aristocrats. They were decadent European nobles, counts, lords, barons, duchesses, because that was, of course, what was glamorous back then. These days, ever since about the 1970s, vampires have tended to be rock stars, Hell's Angels. They wear a lot of black leather. They, pierce their ears, and they are hip and cool and belong on MTV.
Could Donald Kuntz become MTV's first vampire? Besides being a rock and roll headbanger, he's also a long-time blood drinker, a taste he developed as a boy.
I think the first time I tasted another person's blood was probably around the age of 12, and that was in a schoolyard fight. He was on top of me, beating me, but he had a bloody nose, so it was kind of going all over my face, and I happened to like it. It was so compelling, overwhelming. The feeling was, you can't really describe it in terms of any drug or alcohol.
His taste for blood is now a habit that is raising legal and moral issues. How does the law deal with the drinking of human blood and the means Donald Kuntz uses to get it?
The
vampire myth appeals to our fantasies of sexual power and immortality. How far will people go in pursuit of these desires? Mysterious forces beyond, when looking for the answer.
Sally Faye met Donald Kuntz in a Toronto bar. Now, she waits for the only known vampire in captivity to be freed from jail.
The first couple times that I saw him, I knew nothing about him. Just that there was a very intense attraction.
So, well, I'll buy you a drink if you let me have some of your blood. Half joking, we both laughed, and she agreed. And it was more or less in jest, but later on that evening, that's what it led to.
We were talking a bit and kissing a bit. We ended up in my bedroom, and just this knife came out of his pants, and I saw it first, and he was just, I said, you know, where are you going to cut me, type thing, and he pointed to where it was, and before kind of anything was said, it was done.
The cut ended up being a little bit more serious than had been planned, anticipated. She required some stitches for that, but it hasn't made our relationship any worse for the wearer.
Just a look in his eyes, you know. At the time, I guess it was kind of almost evil.
Just was very intoxicating energy that we're building up between us, and by the time that I drank, and at the moment I drank, it's not unusual, but it puts you in kind of a trance-like state. It gives you such a rush. It's incredible.
It was extremely intoxicating for myself.
Sally Faye needed surgery to repair the damage to her wrist. Donald Kuntz was arrested and convicted on assault charges. But during his trial, Sally had a change of heart that echoes the age-old tales of victims who fall for their vampires.
From the time that I was cut, there was dreams that were happening every night. I guess some would be nightmares and some would just be I don't know, just strange dreams. And a stronger bond was growing. I fell just deeply in love with him.
There was a compelling electricity from the very moment we met each other.
Yes, I do let him drink my blood, and I cut myself to ensure that there is no difficulties that way.
In my opinion, it's one of the greatest acts of generosity and love a person can give, actually doling out their own life force to boost someone else's.
Sally says she'll stand by Donald as he faces charges of assaulting a woman and tearing open her cheek with his teeth and biting off part of a man's ear.
This phenomenon of people who have taken the vampire myth too far, this to me is absolutely abhorrent.
Since the dawn of time, warriors have drunk the blood of slain enemies to gain their strength. In the Mass, a priest symbolically drinks the blood of Christ. But vampirism has put Donald Kuntz squarely at odds with the Church.
Anything that does not correspond with Christian theology and the Christian dogma and the whole belief structure is considered evil or satanic or immoral.
This idea that a man can impose his, and there are great sexual overtones here, his sexual will upon a woman is abhorrent.
I don't know, what is possession and what is vampirism?
To the extent that the vampire mythology perpetuates that type of subordination, it is evil, unadulterated evil.
So what about the young adults masquerading as vampires? Is their game a threat to their emotional and spiritual health? Is it lethal in the era of AIDS?
I feel a great difference once the makeup is on and once I'm in character, more than just perhaps the game would allow.
The beast within is just an aspect of everyone, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Hide now, for the sun rises to take its wrath on you.
For as long as you walk this earth, you and your children will cling to darkness. You will drink only blood. You will eat only ashes. You will be always as you were at death, never dying, living on. You will walk forever in darkness. All you touch will crumble into nothing until the last of days.
I don't think a vampire is an evil thing any more than any other predator in the wild. They are part of society.
The vampire myth stands in many ways for powers of evil that are alive in our society today.
I think the vampire myth really points out, if we look at it across cultures, that there is something in consciousness which wants to keep living, but at another level is doomed to die.
I've talked to stewardesses who are vampires. I've talked to all sorts of ordinary folks who could be your next door neighbor, and you just would never know that they have this little secret.
I think vampires, in the final analysis, are not something from out there. There's something from in here. We all have aspects of these terrible characters somewhere within our own minds and within our own psyches.
Whatever the origins and explanations of the vampire myth, this much is certain. The mystery of the undead will continue to fascinate the living. Next time, journey with us to the borders of the known and the unknown on Mysterious Forces Beyond.
Many people say they've lived before. Can we believe them? Forces Beyond investigates next week at this same time. But now, find out why you really are what you eat. From Body Atlas, next on TLC.